Welcome to the Family Map Inventories Refresher. You have most likely signed on to this refresher because you are about to begin using the Family Map with families again soon. This will be a quick reminder of the technical pieces of using the Family Map, like how to use and fill out the form, how to start and wrap up the interview, and we will spend some time discussing goal setting. All of the information we cover today is in your manual. If you have questions after this webinar, you can look them up in your manual or contact the Family Map staff. Let's get started. There are three versions of the Family Map: the early childhood version for families with children 3 to 5 years old, infant toddler version for families with children birth to 3 years old, and a prenatal version for expectant mothers. There are sibling forms for when you serve more than one child in the same family. The sibling forms are shorter. Remember, you would complete a full family map on the youngest child and use a sibling form for any older siblings. Let's look at how the form is set up. Everything you need to know about how to use the Family Map is indicated on the form. The version is shown in the top right-hand corner of the form. Each new section is identified at the top of the page in the section header. The questions asked on the sibling form are identified in the bottom left corner of the section header. This would be helpful if you find yourself at an interview with a sibling but no sibling forms. You see here it says S9 for sibling. This would be the only required question for any older sibling and is the only question listed in the self-support section of a sibling form. Some questions you can skip depending on the answer to a previous question. This is noted to you with written directions and an arrow. We see here that if the caregiver answers no to S1, the directions say, if no, skip to S2. So we can skip questions A through D and move directly to question S2. The Family Map form also tells you when to use the response card. A gray box above the answers will say Use Response Card. You see an example here. One of the key points to using the Family Map is reading it correctly. We know that an answer in the shaded area means there might be a risk, and answers in the unshaded area means there might be a strength. But how do you really know? The key is to reading the gray box beneath the question set. This helps guide us to know when the answers in the shaded area are a concern and that we might want to have more conversation with the caregiver on a certain topic or not. We see here this gray box says, if any response in the shaded area, consider English as a second language as a goal. On this particular question, any answer in the shaded area could be a concern for this family. This may mean the family is not able to understand everything you're trying to communicate with them, and you may need to have more conversation to understand the circumstances. It's important to note that it does not always say if any response in the shaded area. Sometimes this gray box says if all responses, or 6 or more responses in the shaded area, consider X as a goal. In those cases, if the caregiver has only 1 or 2 answers in the shaded area, then this probably is not a concern for the family and could possibly still be considered a strength. No family is perfect. The shaded areas aren't bad. There are flags to help you initiate more conversation with your families. Be sure you're looking to see how many answers in the shaded area would mean a possible risk. The response card and observational card are tools you are given in your training. They are color coordinated to each version of the Family Map. Yellow cards are for early childhood, green cards are for infant toddler, and blue cards are for prenatal interviews. The response card helps the interview to stay on track and can help with privacy issues. If the home was crowded, the parent could point to answers instead of saying them out loud. When you're getting ready for the interview, put the card out with a sheet of paper over it like you see here. As you move through the interview, you can move the paper down to show appropriate answers. Remember, the form will tell you when to use the response card because above the answer options it will say Use Response Card, like you see in the example here. Observational questions are where you get to put your perceptions of the interview. Sometimes what you see and what the parent says are different. Completing the observation questions allows you to note your observations on the form. This will help you to be mindful of any issues you saw, and it notes what you see. The observation questions are identified with an eyeball icon. All observation questions are answered on a 1 through 4 rating scale. Your observational card defines the 1 through 4 scale. The coding looks like this. More information on the observational questions can be found in Unit 3 of your manual. We will look at this a little later in the webinar. If you do not have the response card or observational card that you need, they can be printed from the Family Map website after you have logged in. If you need any help with this, please contact the Family Map staff. The last piece to look at closely on the Family Map is the semi-structured questions. There are 3 semi-structured questions on the Family Map. They are in the Health section, H1, H2, and H3. For these questions, if the caregiver answered no, you mark it and you go to the next question. However, if the caregiver answered yes, then you would need to mark yes and have further conversation with the parent. You want to get enough information from the caregiver to have a good understanding of the situation and know if the family needs further help. This follow-up conversation will also allow you to appropriately mark the observation question. Let's listen to an interview on how it might go when an interviewer had to follow up. We heard from this interview one way to follow up on question H2. Based on this conversation, we could fill in the observation question. Here are the 1 through 4 definitions from the observational card. 1 means difficulty understanding, no plan, or disagrees with the plan. 2 means generally understands but is not consistent with following the plan. 3, some minor difficulties understanding or following the plan. And 4 means understands and follows the plan. The caregiver seems to have a general understanding of the situation. However, the caregiver does not have both medications, so they cannot be following the plan consistently. It also seems to me that the caregiver has minimal understanding of what the medications are for. So we could complete that question like this, marking yes, the child has a health issue, noting the health issue is asthma, and then marking it a 2 based off our definitions from the observational card. More follow-up questions can be found in Unit 3 of your Family Map manual. If you need further assistance with follow-up questions or observational questions, please contact the Family Map staff. The Family Map manual you received at training has many good resources for you to use. In Unit 2, there are checklists like this one to help you get started. There are also sample scripts you could use for talking points as you begin to use the Family Map with families. We will look at the checklists in the manual a little bit later in the webinar. After you have completed a Family Map, the next step will most likely be giving a referral and/or setting a goal with a family. You can document on the Family Map Partnership Agreement. Remember, the Family Map works like a book, with the questions on the page to the right and the Family Partnership Agreement on the left, like the example you see here. One quick thing to notice is how the Family Map and the Family Partnership Agreement go together. You will see in the gray box under each question set there are bolded words. These bolded words are what is listed on the Family Partnership Agreement side. We see here it says, if any response in the shaded area, consider English as a second language as a goal. And on the Family Partnership Agreement side, the first topic listed is English as a second language. Beneath question S5, we see the gray box says, if not currently enrolled in high school or less, consider education as a goal. Education is the third topic listed on the Family Partnership Agreement. Between English as a second language and education is citizenship. Some topics you will see listed like citizenship are unbolded. These are possible topics you could have conversations with families, but are not directly linked to a question on the Family Map. The Family Partnership Agreement has 2 main areas. The top is where you would list any family strengths you see in the family. Where you could mark consider action, where you see a topic you want to talk to a family about, but you're not going to do it right now. So you're red flagging that topic to remind yourself to go back and ask about this topic. And where you can mark referrals. The other piece is where you put in the description of what the referral was, or what the concern was with consider action, or if it's a family strength, why you thought that was a family strength. You can also write in dates. The bottom half of the family partnership agreement is where you would document your goals. You see, you can write in what the goal is, what steps the family and the program are going to take to accomplish the goal, the dates for the goal, and any follow-up conversations you have. Here we see a completed family map. We see that the caregiver dropped out of high school after 9th grade and is not currently enrolled in any type of educational program. After talking with the caregiver, one outcome from this is the caregiver determines they just want more information on obtaining a GED. We would give them a referral and document like this: filling in the referral bubble, noting what we gave them, and the date we gave it to them on. Or another outcome is the caregiver wanted to set a goal. We would document it like this: what the goal is, what steps the caregiver is going to take, what steps the interviewer is taking to support the caregiver, and the dates. The follow-up area is left blank for now. This is where you could mark notes later as the caregiver makes progress or comes up against barriers. There is a place to document 3 follow-ups with this family. It's also possible that you would have mark a goal and a referral. So if based on the goal you gave a referral, you would write in what the goal is and what the referral was. Your filled out family partnership agreement would look like this. There are 3 phases of an interview: the warm-up, the interview, and the wrap-up. The warm-up is the time when you first arrive at the home. During this time, remind the caregiver why you are there, what you're going to be doing, and settle into a place to have the interview. It might go something like this. As you begin your interview, remember the interviewing skills that we talked about in training and you have already practiced. Remember how something is said can be more important than what is actually said. So ask questions neutrally without leading caregivers to an answer. After you ask a question, listen carefully to the caregiver's answers. There will be many times when you ask a question and the caregiver will tell you a story or say more than just the answer to the question. When this happens, listen to what else they are telling you. They may be giving you important details. And be aware of the nonverbal communication between you and the parent. You will be reading the caregiver's body language and they will be reading yours. A lot is said through nonverbal communication. After the interview is over, take some time to review with the caregiver. Talk about some good aspects and then direct them to any concerns you had. It might sound something like this. Choosing and writing goals can be difficult. When you complete the family map, pick a few things to review with the caregiver. Point out a few strengths you saw in the family, and pick out some of the topics you think need further discussion with the caregiver. Ask the caregiver what they think. If there's an immediate need or crisis, you would want to address those first. If not, pick topics that are directly related to the child. After you and the caregiver have decided on a goal topic, the next step is to talk about exactly what the goal is and how it will be completed. When doing this, think about making a SMART goal. SMART stands for specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and timely. Be specific about who is doing what, when, and where. Make it measurable so that you and the caregiver can determine when progress is made and exactly when the goal is completed. Talk about strategies to use and tasks to be completed. Work with families to set realistic goals, something that's achievable and practical for the family at that time. It's also important to put a timeline on a goal. A timeline can help everyone stay focused to get the goal completed. Here is an example of a common goal I see. Child will go to bed earlier. This is a good goal, but there is a lot left up in the air with this goal. How would we measure this? Go to bed earlier than who, or go to bed earlier than when? It's not specific or action oriented. We don't know how the family plans to make this happen, and there's no timeline, so when can this expected to be completed? Changes can be difficult, so if you can work out some of the details, it will be easier for the caregiver to try to begin the change, and it will be easier for you to know how to help the caregiver. Here is the same goal using the SMART format. Caregiver will begin a bedtime routine to get child in bed by 8 p.m. at home 4 or more nights a week using a Get Ready for Bed chart by the next parent-teacher conference. Now the parent and interviewer know exactly what is expected, so if there are barriers, they have a place to begin problem solving. If you would like a copy of the SMART goals, you can print one off the website or contact the Family Map staff. Before we wrap up this refresher, we want to remind you of some Family Map resources: the Family Map Manual and the Family Map Key. We're going to begin by looking at the Family Map Manual. If you have yours handy, you might grab it. You can pause this webinar and come back to it. The Family Map Manual consists of 3 units. Unit 1, the introduction, Unit 2, the interview, and Unit 3 is the Family Map sections. This is the table of contents for Unit 1 Introduction. In Unit 1, the manual talks about the basics of completing the family map, the family partnership agreement, sibling forms, interviewing with more than one caregiver, and confidentiality. If you had questions specific to any of those topics, you could go to Unit 1, look at your table of contents, and go directly to the page that talks about that topic. Unit 2, Interviewing, discusses preparing for the interview, the phases of an interview, body language, and interviewing skills, and then putting it all together. Here you will find sample scripts and the checklist that we talked about earlier. These can help you be more prepared. This is an example of a checklist. This checklist could be helpful to you as you begin going out to interviews to make sure you have all the materials that you need to take with you. I would encourage you to review this checklist so that you don't forget anything. Here is an example of a script. There are sample scripts throughout Unit 2. We don't expect you to read these scripts word for word, but you could read over these to help give you some talking points as you begin working with parents to set up your interviews, to begin your interviews, ways to wrap up your interviews, and just various ways to talk with families. If this is your first or second year for Family Map interviews, or even your third, I would encourage you to maybe look over these scripts and checklists just to make sure as you begin starting them this new year that you don't forget anything, and then just to remember various ways to work with parents. Unit 3 of your manual goes over each 12 sections of the family map. In Unit 3, for each section, you will find the motivation for asking the questions, information on partnering with the family, and steps for partnering with the family. Unit 3 uses a MAPS acronym. M is the motivation, A is the ask, it shows a picture of exactly the question that you're asking. P talks about partnering with families, and steps talks about steps you can take to partner with families. Let's look at an example. Here's an example from Unit 3, Section 2, Routines. In Section 2, there is a question set about getting enough sleep. The question set you see is identified. Next you see M is highlighted. M is the motivation. In this part, under adequate sleep, it will talk about the motivation for why we ask a question about whether or not the child is getting adequate sleep. The A is the ask. Here you see a picture of the questions we're asking about adequate sleep. P is partnering. You see that on the left. Here we talk about when you might want to partner with a family about helping them with their child get more adequate sleep. And then beneath that is S, steps. So different steps you could take to partner with the family. Under steps is also follow-up questions. So if you want to work with a family on this, here are some follow-up questions you could ask them to get more conversation started. Next, you will see the next question set is identified: TV, quality, and quantity. It also goes through the motivation, the ask, partnering, and steps for that question set as well. All of Unit 3 is broken down this way. As you can see, it's fairly small and easy to read paragraphs. This would be helpful if you have a specific question or concern around a specific part of the family map. You could find that question, go to your table of contents, find what section it is, and then you could go directly to that question set and see, what the motivation is for that question set, or if you're wanting to partner or you're looking for some follow-up questions, you can go directly to that specific question set and find information specific to that. The Family Map Manual also addresses the observational questions. So just like a regular question set, it's identified, question set, organization, observational questions. So in Unit 2, at the very end, there's observational questions on the organization of a caregiver's home. So the question set's identified. It shows the MAP, the S is on the next page that we'll look at, but the MAP here, it identifies the definitions for the 1 through 4 rating scales and just gives you some more information about working with the family on those observational questions. And you see the S here. And there are also some follow-up questions for that. So while we don't specifically ask questions about the organization of the home, we're going to provide you with some questions that you could ask to begin conversations around those observational questions if needed. Another resource that we give you in your program is called the Family Map Key. The Family Map Key serves like a resource directory that's specific to the family map. It's broken down into the 12 sections. So here we're looking at the routine section. And the routine section is defined and what we're asking about here. And then it's broken down into 3 columns. The first, it identifies each question set. Then some possible action steps. So if you're wanting to partner with a family, here's some possible action steps. If you don't take your manual with you, these come directly from the manual. So you could go here quickly and look at some possible action steps. And the third is resources. So here is where you could write in your agency specific resources, your local resources, and also if you are a program that uses Tips for Great Kids, we have a version that has tips linked to each family map question. So here we see moving, homelessness, and household transitions, question set, and daily routines. And then you see in the resources column, we have listed different tips that go with those question sets. So if you were out working with a family and they had a concern here, you could look at your Family Map Key and see what tips you could give the family, or if you've written in your local resources or your agency resources, you could see what other resources you have to offer this family. This can help give you a starting place for working with families and helps you do it now versus later. We encourage you to fill this Family Map Key out before you begin your interviews, so when you're out there with families, you already have this resource to just grab and look real fast and see where a good place to start is. If you don't have the Family Map Key, they can be printed from the Family Map website after you log in, or you can contact the Family Map staff and we can get that for you. There's a version with tips and a version without tips if your program does not use it. So that concludes our Family Map refresher. I hope you've enjoyed this refresher. If you have any questions about anything we've covered or any concerns, please let the Family Map staff know. You can call. Here's my phone number, email us, or check out the Family Map website. If you're having any issues with the Family Map website, please let us know. If you don't have a login or you can't find something, we can direct you to the right spot or get you a new login. Thank you, and hope you have good luck with your Family Map interviews this year.